Almost 1400 years ago, a group of 72 men, women and children stood in the face of 30,000 soldiers in the deserts of Karbala. Among the 72 was a man known to be as one of the leaders of the youth of paradise. He was a man who refused to bow to tyranny and ignore oppression. He was a man whose slogan and message resonate eternally through the winds of time. He is Hussein ibn Ali, the revolutionary martyr and the grandson of the Messenger of Allah, Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi. This film seeks to understand why this battle is important to millions across the globe, what it taught humanity, who holds on to the message, and why the world refuses to forget Hussein.
To understand the importance of Imam Hussein, we need to go back to the time of the Prophet himself. Everybody accepts that Yazid is a very bad example of Muslim life, let alone of Muslim leadership. He openly disobeyed the commands of God, he openly disobeyed the Sharia. It's a crisis of leadership and a crisis of deciding how are you going to respond when injustice and tyranny is facing you. Now, we have here a hadith of Prophet Muhammad which enables us to get a sense of the importance of this. He says on one occasion, the greatest jihad is to speak the word of truth into the face of a tyrant. This is the highest challenge to any human being, to actually face down a tyrant and not give in. So this is what's going on in the mind of Hussein in Medina with his community, and he knows that in a very short period of time he is going to be faced with the demand to make an oath of allegiance to Yazid, who he knows to be a totally unworthy person to lead the community.
On his journey to Kufa, which was brutally intercepted in Karbala's deserts, Imam Hussein was joined by 72 members of his family and loyal companions. This fact in itself upholds the nobility of Hussein, for he was prepared to sacrifice all he had and all he loved to maintain the purity of his grandfather's divine message.
Something dramatic has happened in the Muslim community at this stage. We're not even yet 50 years after the death of the Prophet, and we are about to see the Prophet's own grandson being massacred. The night before the battle, Imam Hussein gathers together his people and says to them, look, tomorrow we're going to be attacked. Please, it's me they want. Go away, leave. And they respond, we won't go, we will stay, we will die with you. And now we see another huge human dimension of the question. What do you do if you are the supporter of an upright, honest, just person who is facing injustice? Do you stand with him, even at the cost of your own life? Or do you run to save yourself? Now remember, none of these people knew what was going to happen. So we're not only talking about them being willing to sacrifice their own life, but also the lives of their women and the children. Is there anything in life worth dying for? Is there anything so important that you are prepared to take a stand on it and not give in, even at the cost of your own life?
Characters from the battle have become symbolic. There is Hur, who betrayed but was forgiven, and Abbas, the heroic half-brother, whose hands were mutilated whilst trying to quench the thirst of the children.
Al-Hur is lined up with the Umayyad army, and he knows that he is soon going to be given the order to attack. And he breaks ranks. And he rides down to Imam Hussein, he throws himself from his horse, and he asks for his forgiveness. I am the one. I have brought you to this place. I have corralled you in the field of your own death. Hussein raises him up, forgives him, and restores him to human dignity. Imagine the spiritual strength of one who will raise up the person who has brought him to the point of oppression. They are short of water, and somebody goes to try and get water, and so we have a heroic story. The half-brother Abbas goes to try to get water and bring it back to give it to the women and the children of the community, and he is cut to pieces in the process. Hussein actually takes out his own infant son, a baby in arms, and pleads with the Umayyads. I know that you've got it against me, but why should you have it against the baby? Give the baby water. Have mercy on the child. If you won't trust me with the water, I'll leave the child on the rock and you can give it water. And the response is to kill the child in the arms of his father.
Imam Hussein does not belong to one group. He has been acknowledged and revered by figures of all demographics and denominations throughout time.
If we are to understand the meaning of Karbala, we need to take it out of an Iraqi context, out of a Shia context, out of a Muslim context, and to see it as a piece profoundly of human drama. As a community, we have a history. We didn't just start with our own generation, and we can look back into how other human beings lived the human project. We can take examples from them. We can also take warnings from them. These are the circumstances that led these people to do these terrible things. This is the person who in this situation responded in this wonderful and noble way.
It can only and only give us positive things to take back, no matter which group we belong to.
Don't believe that the message of Imam Hussein is limited to a race or a nation or a religion even.
Remembering, keeping alive, commemorating those events gives us something upon which we can reflect in our own human lives today. I, as a Christian, would also want to take my own lessons in remembering the events of Karbala, to remember the day. We have a phrase, to keep the day as holy. Holy not in the sense that this is a wonderful thing, but holy in the sense that this is a profound moment of human history. And then to remember the events, to keep them alive. The word remember doesn't just mean, oh, I recall the facts. It means, in a sense, remembering them, reliving them. They live on in my life and memory. And so I am reflecting then, what do those events mean for me today, and how do they speak to my human condition? I think the second thing is that Imam Hussein is called the Prince of Martyrs. And as the Prince of Martyrs, he gives an example to every human being of total surrender, total submission to the will of God. Because the martyr is one who makes the total surrender of their life to God. Even my very existence is in your hands. If it be your will, I will accept death at the hand of the enemy. And this reminds us of the human need to surrender all to God, to acknowledge that we are the servants of God, that our lives do not belong to us, they belong to God. And if it should please God that I should die at this time in this way, who am I to complain? Who am I to say to God, I know better? So martyrdom is a profound example of human submission, of human acceptance of the divine will in all things. Now, we may not be called to martyrdom today, but we are called to submit to the will of God today in every way. So remembering the events of Karbala are a way of remembering the human vocation to be the servant of God. What I find so attractive about the life of Imam Hussein is the many dimensions of his life, even just in these few days leading up to Karbala itself. We see some remarkably virtuous aspects of the life of Hussein. He is generous and kind with the enemy. He gives them water. He gives their horses water. He gives them, as it were, human dignity and respect. The way that we treat our enemy. Are these fellow human beings like me? They have mothers and fathers, they have wives and husbands, they have children and families just like me. The ultimate human responsibility to take another human life. Another great thing that I take from the story of Hussein is his courage. It's easy to talk, but when you're actually waking up to face the field of battle, facing certain death, facing an uncertain future for the ones that you love, for your wives and the children of those who stand with you, it takes courage to stand your ground. And human courage is a very important part of the dignity of being human, in small things and in great. The enemy, and the battle was going backwards and forwards. The two of them were fighting together, and eventually Ali overpowers him, has him on the floor, and is just about to kill him. And his enemy from the floor spits into his face. And Ali puts away his sword and walks away. And his own supporters are saying, "What are you doing? You had him. He was on the floor. He was in your hands. One stroke and you would have killed him." And Ali responds, "And I would have done if I could have delivered that stroke before he spat in my face. Because then I would have been acting with right motives, with right intention. But once he spat in my face, I was so angry that he had insulted me in this way that I would have been acting for the wrong motives, the wrong intention, and I could not kill him in that situation." Now then, this reminds us of the morality of warfare and fighting. It reminds us of how you treat your enemies when they are captive, and we see the way in which the women and children of the field of Karbala were treated with inhumanity, with disrespect, without human dignity. Is that an appropriate way to treat another human being, just because they are your prisoner? We see the way in which the dead are mutilated and destroyed so that you can hardly find bodies to bury. Hussein dies in the desert. His followers are killed with him. These are, in the terms of the world, pretty insignificant acorns. And yet it reminds us that God's acorns grow into mighty oak trees. Because here we are, 2,000 years after the time of Jesus, 1,400 years after the time of Hussein, and we remember them, and they are examples to us still, and their names live on in the lives of their followers in ways that they could not possibly have imagined. And it reminds us then, in our life of faith, what matters is not the impact that we have, how can we measure it, but how faithful are we to what God calls us to do and to plant, in the trust that the acorn that we plant today, however small it may be, in God's good grace and in God's good time, can grow into a mighty oak. This is the life of faith. We do not ask to see results now.
Without Imam Hussein, without his courage, without his perseverance, without his revolution, without his martyrdom, the world would not be what it is today.
Every day we have the opportunity to live the Karbala spirit. Every day we have the opportunity to show those higher virtues that Hussein showed. And so Hussein becomes a role model, an example for every human being.